Welcome everybody. Happy to have you here today. I'm Chris Monahan. I'll be your MC for today's Tug event. Thank you for joining us. We got a great event planned for you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So before every Tug event, I always like to thank all the wonderful people that help put these events together each and every month. This is our Tug Advisory Council. These are all the folks that are dedicated to meeting every other week and helping us plan our events. They do everything from planning the speakers to planning the locations, scheduling the invites. And so I definitely, they do a fantastic job running these events. But while we're doing this, thank you. I wanted to do a special call out to one of our advisory council members, Amy, who was nominated for Tableau Vizzies. Yay, Amy! She was nominated for the Forum Fanatic. So if you never run across one of her posts on the Tableau community, you need to check out Tableau community a little bit more. She is everywhere. I forget how many she does a day, but it's a lot. So she's everywhere. But if you're not familiar with the Vizzies, this is the ninth year they've done it. There are awards given to the Tableau community across 15 different categories. So this is really is amazing recognition. In addition, I want to thank our community. We were actually nominated for Tug of the Year. So congratulations to us, the board, and all of you out there for making this such a great tug. So that's really special as well. If you're interested in joining our Tug Advisory Council, if you like doing like marketing or you have a knack for like event planning or just want to network in general, please reach out to myself. Here's my contact information or one of the other advisory council members that's here on the call, and we'd be happy to invite you to our next meeting. We do have a quarterly dinner that we do. We have one coming up here on May 20th at 5:30 at Gusto. So if you're here in Austin and you'd like to join us and you're interested in joining the advisory council, this will be a great opportunity to come meet us. So again, we'll post this information also in our Slack channel so you guys have it. But if you're interested in joining our advisory council, join us for dinner. It's a lot of fun.
No
So
obligation. Just come check it out. Okay.
yeah, yeah. No obligation. No obligation. Just come check it out, get free dinner and a drink. So it's fun. Um, as I mentioned, we got a great tug event planned for you today. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some upcoming events that we have, discuss some general housekeeping, and then we have our very own advisory council member, Cait Sojka, who is the manager of Dashboards and Insights at Visa, and she's going to give you an amazing presentation that she did at TC called 8 Ways to Elevate Your Text Tables. So you definitely don't want to miss this. And then we'll go into our Tableau conference town hall. So that's where we do a recap of TC in case you didn't check it out. And then lastly, we'll have our networking breakout session, which is Ask Anyone Anything. And Homer and I will be moderating that as well. So just a reminder about the meeting format. This is a live meeting. It's virtual. So please observe general Zoom etiquette. You're encouraged to turn on gallery view for the best viewing experience. When you're not speaking, please go on mute. But we do encourage you to participate. So go ahead and post in the chat there. Post any questions that you might have. If you have any questions for a speaker, just send a direct question or message to Homer, and he'll go ahead and collect them, and we'll save them for the end. If you want to check out our YouTube channel also, we're on YouTube there at Austin Tableau User Group. We got a backlog of all the amazing speakers that we had over the past couple of years, so definitely check that out as well. Some general announcements. We have a June tug coming up on June 13th, and this is really, really special. If you went to Tableau Conference or checked it out online, Chris Westlake, who is the Iron Biz champion this year, is going to be presenting, and he will be giving us sort of a sneak peek how he went from an entrant to a finalist for Iron Viz. And so we always have an Iron Viz finalist on here every year. It's amazing. You definitely have to hear them speak. So check that one out. Then we'll be taking a slight break for July, and then we'll be right back again in August 8th to do another session to wrap up the rest of the year. So as I mentioned, we have a Slack community. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do and just get the latest news and information, or you have just general questions about Tableau, join our Slack community. Nicole will go ahead and post in our chat a link to where you can join. Feel free to join us and ask any sort of questions that you might have. All right. So without further ado, we will get to our featured speaker, Cait Sojka, who, as I mentioned, is one of our advisory council members. She's had been on the advisory council for many years. She's also a Tableau certified instructor and recently started at Visa as the manager of dashboards and insights. So, with that, I will turn it over to you, Cait.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. And thanks to y'all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And excitingly, today, I'm going to go through this presentation. And just before I jump in and get started, the thing I want everybody to know is that because I know people are going to ask, I posted on LinkedIn today. You can find me using my name. Not a lot of Cait Soikas out there. I posted a link to the session recording, the live session recording from Tableau conference, to the actual Tableau workbook where you can download from Tableau Public every single thing that I'm going to cover in Tableau. And has all of these slides that are downloadable as well. So there is nothing that you are going to see in the next 15 to 20 minutes or so that is not available to you on the internet in this exact moment. So feel free to find that on my LinkedIn. I can also post my LinkedIn in a little bit once I wrap up and we move into the next section. So
Oh,
this
Kate, just real quick, I have a great announcement. I just got a confirmation from Aunt Pulley, and he will be speaking at our August tug. So that's
amazing.
pretty exciting.
That'll
That's
be
hot off the presses.
that'll
Wow.
be so great.
Excellent.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that exciting announcement, Amy. Amy, in case anybody didn't know, is the amazing brain behind all of our speakers. So thank you so much, Amy, for the work that you put in to give folks like me and other folks an opportunity to share their talents with this tug. So thank you so much for that. This is going to be an abbreviated version of 8 ways to elevate your text table. So again, in the full recording, you'll see live videos and things like that of exact techniques. But for this, I just really want to cover and hit the highlights for time and just for interest's sake here. So the 8 options, or last year at Tableau conference in 2023, Eric and I had presented on 10 steps for user-friendly design. So this is very much in line with that sort of idea here in terms of really focusing on design-mindedness when we are creating content for Tableau so that our end users' brains and eyes can really take in the information that we are wanting to show them. So overall, the scenario here, I'm sure one that y'all run into just as much as I do, which is that a lot of our end users continue to ask for tabular views. They're like, hey, can you really just send this to me in Excel? Feel free, you can use a little reaction, raise your hand if that's ever happened to you. It's something that happens to me, literally happened to me today at work. So the idea here is bearing in mind the fact that people oftentimes are really accustomed to getting tabular views. How can we integrate that knowledge when we are creating our dashboards in Tableau so that they can be a little bit easier for our end users to see and understand and gain insights from? So overall, this is our starter dashboard. And in this particular case, we actually have 3 text tables present on this dashboard. The bottom one actually has over 3,000 marks in it, which means that our brains, in order to make sense of what we're seeing here or gain any type of knowledge or information, are going to have to literally make sense of 3,000 plus tiny little pictures, which is going to be really hard. So overall, the focus here is what can we do from a functional technical standpoint to improve this experience for our end users. So these are the 8 that we are going to go through, and I'm just going to go one by one. And then on the last one, I'll do like a quick little demo how to. Again, the workbook is available for every single one of these, so you can pick it apart by downloading it from Tableau Public. The first one is a single row drill down. Oftentimes, what we end up with is a scenario where we have a text table that has multiple dimensions in it, in specific where our end users may only need the values from one of those dimensional values at a time. For example, in this case, I have a table that has category and subcategory in it. It's not really helpful. I'm not going to be comparing sales from a subcategory in the office supplies category to those of a subcategory in the technology category. So rather than using the default hierarchy option in Tableau, I'm going to make it possible for my end users to basically drill down or to expand to the next level of the hierarchy, one value at a time. Now, Two options for this. We could use set actions or we could use parameter actions. I'm a parameters girly, so I tend to leverage parameter actions, and that's what we did here. So four-step process that we are going to go through. The first is that we are going to create a string parameter that contains the values of our category field. You would use whatever highest level dimension you were interested in. From there, you are going to write a calculation that looks like this. If that drill down parameter is equal to the dimension that the drill down parameter is based off of, again, in this case, category, then show the subcategory. Otherwise, else, show nothing, literally just a blank, not even a space, just a blank. You could use this logic again for whatever hierarchy of dimensions that you have in your data set. And then importantly, we're going to leave on our row shelf, we're leaving the category field and we are placing this calculation next to it, to the right of it on our row shelf. And then we would show the parameter at a parameter action. So the end result is going to be this. When an end user selects a category in the view, when we add a parameter action, then the value of the parameter is going to take on the value of the category that's been clicked on. Because of our calculation logic here, when that category value matches the value that we are passing through from our parameter, then we're seeing those categories, subcategories, but not any other subcategories. So pretty great functionality here. You can actually even continue to build this out. So you could have multiple layers of this hierarchy drill down, perfectly possible. And again, means that our end users in this case are having to look at a third as many values as they would otherwise. Option number 2 to elevate your text tables is a parameter swap. What we're getting at here is that I have a scenario in which my end users need to be able to see subcategory information and segment information. But again, those two dimensions don't really have anything to do with one another. It's not like I'm trying to see consumer bookcases or corporate chairs or something like that. Instead, I just really want to see my categories then broken down one or the other. Same that we could do for our measures. I'm not necessarily trying to compare sales and profit at the same time, but I need to be able to know what those values are individually. So the way that we can do this is by leveraging a parameter. Same thing that we saw earlier, but just giving y'all the 4 steps that you will ever need to work with parameters in Tableau. I know that this can be one of those sort of nebulous concepts if you're newer to Tableau. So if you just remember, or I don't know, print out this slide and staple it to your cubicle, these are the 4 steps that you would use anytime that you are trying to do anything with a parameter in Tableau. Step number 1, you need to create the parameter. Step number 2 is you need to write a calculation that controls the parameter. Especially what we mean in this case is that we need to create a calculation that ties the parameter to a value in our data set. By default, parameters are not associated with a data set in Tableau. They live out in the ether. So we need to tell them what data to point at. Step number 3, we need to then use that calculation somewhere in our view on the column shelf, row shelf, marks card, somewhere in our view. And step number 4 is we need to make it possible for our end users to change the value of the parameter, either by showing a parameter control or adding a parameter action. So in this elevation here, we are creating a string parameter that contains the values, in this case, of our measure. So I would literally have in my values column in my parameter the word sales, which would display as the word sales, and then the word profit, which would display as the word profit. The important thing is that whatever ends up in that value column, that is what we are passing through in our calculation. Tableau doesn't really care about the display as column. That's more just how our end users will eyeball that value in the parameter control window. But Tableau doesn't really use it for any purpose other than that. What really matters is that values column of our parameter. So we are then going to write a calculation. In this situation, we're using a case logic function where we are telling Tableau in the case of our parameter, so in the case of our parameter, when the value from the value column of our parameter is sales, using quotations here because I picked a string parameter type, then I want Tableau to look in my data set and add up all the rows of the sales column. When profit then I want Tableau to look in my actual data set and add up all the rows in my profit column. That is what that calculation is doing. It is tying the value column of my parameter to my actual data values. From there, in this particular scenario, I'm going to use my calculation on the rows, on the text shelf of my marks card. And then I am going to add the parameter to the columns, not the parameter calculation, but the parameter itself, so that my column will be labeled with the parameter's name. So the reason that the word profit shows up here is because profit is selected in my parameter control, and I am using the sales profit swap parameter on the column shelf. The actual values here are being derived from my calculation that is tying my parameter to the data set. Elevation option number 3, guided analytics. The idea here is that we are taking users through a selection process. So instead of getting everything everywhere all at once, they're only getting the information that they need. So steps for this process is that we are creating separate worksheets in order to determine the sort of guiding principles here. So the first one is that we are going to, in this case, I created 3 separate worksheets, one that has the values for region, one that has the values for state, and finally a third that has the values for all of my cities. From here, I have my region and state worksheets in one dashboard and my city worksheet in a completely separate dashboard that's formatted identically to that other dashboard. From there, rather than having to write calculations or do anything crazy, I'm simply adding a filter action to my initial dashboard so that when a user selects a mark, the source sheet being the region sheet, then it is filtering the state sheet. When an end user selects a mark on the state sheet, it's actually going to navigate them to that secondary dashboard that has my city level sheet on it. So what this looks like here is this, where my end users, again, this is dashboard number 1 that has my region and state worksheets here, and that has those 2 filter actions applied to it, region to state and then state to city. Importantly, on your like detailed level dashboard, the second one that you're being navigated to, you likely would want to add a navigation button to get your end users back to this first one so that they don't get stuck and are able to kind of loop back if there was a scenario in which they wanted to make another selection. Elevation option 4, highlight tables. Highlight tables, also known as heat maps, take advantage of our human brains and the fact that we notice color before literally anything else. Our brains are wired for it. So making sure that we are taking advantage of our sort of natural human impulses to notice color and to take that to a step further so we can use that just natural functionality of our brains to actually emphasize key trends and patterns. Whatever is most important for our end users to see, that's what we want to make color. Specifically, the warmer, brighter, and more saturated the colors are, the more our brains will notice them. So your deep reds, your bright oranges, your yellows, that is what our users' brains are going to see first. So overall here, a couple of thoughts. If we are coloring by a continuous measure, super easy. You're just going to drag that puppy onto the color shelf of your marks card once you've created your base table, and Tableau will color automatically. If you are coloring by a discrete field, you are going to need to do a little bit of a hack. My favorite hack for that, so that you don't just end up with like little squares that happen to be colored and not the whole cell being colored, is to actually change the mark type in your table to bar and then create an inline calculation where you just double click on the marks card and type in the number 1, put that calculation onto the size shelf, and then max out the size there. And so then the color will actually fill a bar that has a size of 1. So it looks like it's filling that cell. Last little thought here is if you want, it's actually possible when you have a table that has multiple different measures in your columns. So maybe you have profit and sales and profit ratio or whatever else. You can color each of those columns individually if you drag measure values onto the color shelf and then right click on it and choose use separate legends. So overall, again, highlight table, this is what we're talking about. The fact that if I were asking you to point out which subcategory and region had the lowest profit ratios, it's going to take your brain less than a second to figure out that that negative 28% is jumping out at us, right? Our brain screams orange before we even really understand why. So it helps direct our end users' attention and lets them find the answer faster. Step number 5, we are over halfway through for those of you who are getting antsy. Thanks for letting me talk at you. Step number 5 here, the option is visual tables. So the idea here is that we are taking a table that looks like this, where we just have text mark after text mark after text mark for however many dozens of columns and hundreds or thousands of rows. And we're going to make this a lot more visually intuitive for our end users. So what that looks like is using what I have seen people refer to on the internet as Tableau scaffolding. This is different than data scaffolding, where we're filling in empty values using a secondary data set. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about sort of hacking around Tableau's default nature or behavior to be able to create more of a tabular format. And the way that we typically do that, or I typically do that, is by using a calculation like min of 0.0. The sort of dot there, the fact that it's a float, that it has a decimal place, is important because it's going to give us more functionality over our little axis placeholder. But from there, we can have as many of those scaffolded min of 0.0 columns as we want, so that we can fill in whatever visual pieces of information we would like. So from here, we then get individual marks cards for each one of those min of 0.0 calculations that we have. So we can completely format the values in that column in whatever form or fashion that we want. So overall, what it looks like is something like this. In this particular case, we actually have 5 min 0.0 column calculations. The first 2 are actually, we've dual axised, axised them together to create a donut chart instead of a pie chart. The middle 2, we are using a bar and a Gantt line as the mark types on those marked cards to create a bullet graph. And then the final one, we are using a mark type of bar, and we have created a calculation that colors those bars based on the amount of profit ratio. And we're then overlaying our profit ratio values on the text shelf there. So again, we just have the option to make this so much more intuitive than just a regular old chart that has this many values. It's going to be way easier for our brain to take in information like this. We are literally showing the exact same information. Option number 6 here is custom sort controls. What we're getting at here, 2 big thoughts. One is, a lot of times I notice that a lot of users of Tableau have no idea how to sort columns, because the hovering over the header and getting like a little tiny 3 bars or an A and Z is not intuitive at all. And so really like to take the opportunity to make it easier for them whenever possible to control the sorting. The second is that in scenarios where we're using like that visual table technique of min 0.0 or whatever other placeholder you're using, you're not going to have the typical headers show up, column headers show up in Tableau. So we need another method to be able to allow our end users to sort based on a particular column. Okay, stick with me here. This is a lot, kind of a big calculation, so feel free to peruse. And again, this is available for y'all on the internet. But the first thing that we are going to do is create a parameter that lists all of our sortable columns. So if I want to be able to give my end users the ability to sort by order ID or order date or profit or sales, I need to have all of those listed out in my parameter. From there, I'm going to write my calculation. And the consideration here is that in this particular case, I have 4 different types of data, 4 different field types for the columns that I want to be able to sort by. And Tableau doesn't really know how to handle that by default, right? Like sort by a letter. Just kidding, sort by a number. So in this case, what I'm doing, what this calculation is doing, is converting the logic behind having all of my columns be sortable as numbers. So for my fields like profit, profit ratio, quantity, and sales that are already numbers, this is super easy. I'm literally just going to tell Tableau, hey, whatever the actual number is in the rows, right, for that column, just use those. Perfect. Okay, but then we get to the weird part with strings and dates. So two thoughts. One, strings with numbers, something like an order ID field that has a alphabetical component to it, as well as a component that is actually numeric, like the order ID number itself. In this particular case, just to break down this calculation a little bit further, we're doing really three things. The first thing that we are doing is we are splitting out order ID into its requisite parts there. So the actual, in this case, order ID as a field in Tableau has the country first. It's US or CA, US or Canada. And then it has the year in the middle, and then it has the actual order ID number. So we're splitting it out. So we're keeping the year and the ID number. And then we are turning those into decimals. So that float calculation is converting those values, those numeric values from our order ID into a decimal. And then we're taking the min of that. So just the smallest value there from having added or concatenated those two float numbers together. From there, we then have our strings without numbers, something like our city field. In this case, we are using an ASCII, ASCII, ASCII function. Super cool function. If you didn't know about it, now you do. It basically is returning the number of a given letter. So they run from capital A is 65, number 65. So that's literally what it would return for a capital A. Z is 90. And then importantly, upper letter and lowercase letters don't have the same. So lowercase a is not 65. It's something else. Don't have it memorized off the top of my head. So what we are doing here is taking two things. First, we are taking the first letter. That's what we see in terms of the upper city here. ASCII. And then the second, we're actually taking also the second letter because it's common that cities start with the same letter. Atlanta and Austin, for example, how would Tableau know which one of those should come first? Well, AT versus AU, that's what we're doing here. So in this case, we're taking both the first and second letter, applying that ASCII function so that we get a number returned. And then once again, we're having Tableau consider that float number as a decimal when it's taking into consideration that the sorting for that column. Last but not least, we're doing the exact same thing for our date. We're taking our date, turning it into a decimal number so Tableau can use that to know how to sort. The final thing that we are doing is that sort of counterintuitively, rather than giving our end users the option to choose whether to sort ascending or descending on any of these columns, which we absolutely could have done in our parameter, I'm making the assumption that people want to see the highest values of profit, sales, etc. So I'm going to default to a descending sort control. But for my strings and my dates, I'm going to want those to be ascending. Start with the A's or start with the oldest dates first. So that's where the little minus sign is coming ahead of those calculated values. So that little tiny minus sign that you're seeing is going to make this ascending for those three columns instead of descending. Last but not least, in my actual table, I am going to apply this sort calculation as the field to sort by. So in this case, I'm actually applying that sort to my order ID dimension. And so the entire table, effectively what's going to be happening is that the order ID column will be sorted by whatever other column I'm selecting. So in this case, I am sorting by sales. So my highest sales values are appearing on top all the way down to my smallest sales values. If I were to select quantity, then the orders with the biggest quantity, in this case, these two, would end up on top and then descending from there. so on and so forth for my entire table. So really, really helpful in scenarios where we have a need to be able to sort by multiple different measures and dimensions. Okay, second to last one here. Thanks for bearing with me. This one's really simple, is a side by side. And the concept here in terms of elevating our text tables has more to do with preparing our end users' brains to anticipate the values that they are going to then see in the text table. And so what we're saying is place a text table side by side next to a more visually intuitive chart. That way, instead of our end users just having to dig through a bunch of numbers, their brains are going to be primed to contextually understand what they're looking for. And then we can also use filter actions to make it easier. So instead of having to look at all values everywhere all at once, we can just see the values that we're interested in. So the example I have for you here is something like this, where I have, instead of a standalone cities text table that has maybe 3,000 cities in my original data set and just saying to my end users, good luck, hope you find what you need, instead I can say, hey, what if we show this on a map and then we narrow down the options based on the state that you've selected? My screen may be showing a little bit funny for some of y'all depending on the brightness. So just to be clear, you can select or see all states in this map. I just only have New York selected at this current time. And so what we're seeing on the right then is a table that is only showing New York cities. So it's going to help my brain to contextualize and understand. In the map, I'm coloring each state by the sales. So I would have known that New York has some of the highest sales of any state in the country. And so I'm expecting or anticipating high values of sales when I end up seeing that text table. Last but not least, we have dynamic zone visibility. This is one of my favorite things. I'm constantly trying to find use cases in the real world to apply this technique. So definitely wanted to include it. Dynamic zone visibility is giving us sort of like the best of the best here in terms of guided analytics, side by side. It's kind of combining a lot of those other topics in terms of really giving us a very functional way to dynamically present or hide tabular views for our end users. Why would we want to do that? Well, one, dynamic zone visibility only shows content when it's needed. That's the visibility part of it. And so we can buy back a lot of real estate on our dashboards. So instead of having to take up a huge amount of space on our dashboard for this massive table, we can hide it until end users need it. Second, in terms of having content be hidden, Tableau uses lazy loading when it comes to hidden containers. What this means is Tableau is not querying or rendering the values in that hidden container until the container gets exposed. So our dashboard will actually load faster when we use dynamic zone visibility than if we were just trying to show the exact same dashboard with that hidden content shown at the beginning. Last but not least, again, we are helping contextualize our end users' brains and taking advantage of the visual nature of humans so that we are giving them a more visually intuitive view first and then showing them something tabular. So 4 steps of dynamic zone visibility. This is a parameterized functionality, so it's going to look a lot like using a parameter. Step number 1, we're going to create the parameter. Step number 2, this is really, really important. With dynamic zone visibility, it works based on the fact that you have a single calculation for every single value in your parameter that is a Boolean data type. Parameter value is equal to one value from your data set. And you can have as many of those calculations as you need. From there, you are going to enable dynamic zone visibility for the piece of content or pieces of content on your dashboard by selecting that piece or pieces of content. And on the layout tab of the dashboard window, you are going to check the box for control visibility using and then select that Boolean calculation that you created. Last but not least, you can either show the parameter control or add a parameter action. In this particular case, I actually, and I'm going to show this to y'all, but the way that I built this dashboard is that I created one that was very visually intuitive, and then I overlaid on top of that entire dashboard a floating horizontal container. That's what you're seeing in the green big box. Within that floating horizontal container, I have 5 vertical containers, one for each of my regions, and then one that's literally just blank. It just has a see-through, transparent, blank object in it. There's nothing in it whatsoever. And the reason that I did that is so that I could have my table disappear. So show each regional table when I want it, and then don't show a table if I'm not asking for a specific region's table. So overall here, some functionality, but I am actually going to demo this for you, and then we will be done to listening to me talk ad nauseum. So this is what the dashboard looks like when it is done. When somebody selects a region here, they see the detailed values for just the region that they've selected. And if they select it again, it completely disappears. On, off, visible, invisible. So how did I make this happen? Well, again, 4-step process here. Step number 1 is that I created this parameter here called region parameter that has each value of each of my regions, plus importantly, a value for none. This is really important. We'll get to why in a second. Step number 2, writing calculations that tie the parameter to my data. You can see those here. So I have a calculation where, oops, if it's visible to you, maybe not. 2 shakes here. There we go. So I have a calculation where region parameter is equal to central. I have one of these for every single one of those parameter values, including my none here. Step number 3 was, again, I created that horizontal container, floated it over everything in my view. And so what that looks like here, here's my floating container. So what I did was I selected, this is just the vertical container for my central region. So on the layout tab, I clicked control visibility using and selected my region equals central parameter calculation. I did that for all 4 of my regions, plus the none container is tied to my calculation equaling none. From here, I decided that instead of using a parameter control where somebody would maybe just use a drop down that said show the table for, and then they would pick a region, instead I wanted to make this interactive. So what I did was I created these cute little floating buttons. So what my buttons look like, I have one for each one of my regions. So central, east, south, and west, they all have their own button. And on my button sheet, very straightforward. First things first, I have region on the level of detail shelf, as well as filtering each button's worksheet to just that region. And then I am using a transparent shape and a transparent color. In order to use a transparent color, you need to add it to your preferences.tps file in your My Tableau repository folder. In order to have a transparent shape, you need to have added a transparent shape into your shapes folder of your My Tableau repository. From there, I then, on my dashboard, added my parameter action. So in this case, my parameter action here, it's running off of each one of my buttons. My target parameter is my region parameter, and my source field is my region field. Here's the kicker. The reason that my individual region tables disappear when you click that button again is because I am setting the value to none, where this is telling Tableau to set my region parameter to none, which then ties or corresponds to my none or blank empty container. I know this was kind of a lot in a short amount of time, but I really want to make sure that we get to our little TC town hall. So I'll field some questions in the chat, but otherwise going to open it up actually to our TC town hall questions. So the way that this is going to work is that I'm going to pose some questions, and please feel free if y'all would like to either come off of mute and respond, or if you would prefer to put it in the chat, that also works as well. But would love to hear from y'all. So the first question for those of you that attended Tableau conference is, what was your favorite part of the conference? What was your favorite part of the conference?
Oh, I usually vote day to night out, but
Mm.
I
Were
do
you
like.
were you in the mosh pit?
No, I was not, but the DJs were pretty cool. DJs were pretty cool.
Mm.
I heard that whole playlist was created using Tableau. Yes, true story.
Oh, really? That's so
Yeah,
cool.
it's cool. Yeah. No,
Awesome.
anybody else check out maybe the online? Check out the sessions online or the keynote. Did y'all find anything else pretty cool?
Krishma like the Iron Viz.
I like the Iron Viz. I think the Iron Viz was amazing. If y'all have not seen the Iron Viz, I won't spoil it, but well, I guess I already did. Chris Whistling wins, but still, it's it is awesome. He did a fantastic job. So you definitely want to check that out too. Yeah. Was there a session?
Maybe just get a show of hands who actually attended TC.
Either on Salesforce Plus or live in
Yeah,
person,
just
either way.
use the gesture to
To the gesture.
reactions to raise your hand.
Let's see.
There's
We
one,
got
two,
4.
3, 4.
Yeah. All
Who
right.
else?
All right.
5.
The rest of y'all were probably working or in some sort of work meeting, right? I know how that is. It's hard to get out. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, it's almost a third, almost half. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I love the Apple-based silicone support for sure. Should make things a lot speedier for folks that are using a Mac. So that's super exciting. I'm a strong PC user over here, so we'll not get to take advantage of that. I see that Raj put that he liked a few of the hands-on labs. I'm curious, did anyone else get to attend any of the hands-on labs? And if so, were there any sort of techniques or key takeaways that you gained that you might be implementing soon? Feel free, again, come off mute, put in the chat, whatever's easiest for folks.
Yeah, I would say that I attended couple of lab, and one of the lab was a join, merge, those kind of thing. So I'm going to implement that, the concept and the clarity while explaining in the workplace. So that's what I learned very good. It was very well defined with the sugar cube as a bigger part and then granular going to the powder of the sugar. That analogy was very good. So I like that part. Thank you.
That's cool.
Awesome. Any other sort of hands-on, or we can open it a little bit more broadly too in terms of that question. Any other techniques or new things that folks learned about where they just kind of had that epiphany of, oh, I'm going to implement that?
Oh, I think in the Tableau tip battle, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, when I saw that you could like, when you didn't have a date, you could turn it into a string, put no date, and then put it back into a date. And so instead of just being a null space, it says no date. That's pretty cool. Also, when Vince like pulled one pillow onto the other and made an LOD, I was like, oh, that's super cool. So go Vince.
That is cool.
That's awesome. I got to attend some of my friends, Agata Kederick and Kayla Swain. They did a presentation on dates. And kind of to your point, Amy, I feel like dates are one of those things where I spend a lot of time in the community forums whenever I'm trying to figure things out. I'm like, I don't have the brain space to memorize this, and it's frustrating me. And they had a lot of really, really cool tips. But one that definitely like stuck out to me was what I should say two. One was parameterizing the date options, not for necessarily for end users, but for dashboards that you know are going to like roll over into next year or something, where you're giving yourself as the dev the ability to toggle between using today or max date in all of your other date calculations. I thought was so genius. So just having those as like individual calculations that are tied to a parameter. So that way, you could just have it when you go to publish the workbook set to either one of those. I thought, I was like, why haven't I always been doing this? I've been hard coding this every time. And then another one, they demoed a way to like make like a little mini calendar to double check dates, like the actual data that was coming in. So that way, if you knew that you were supposed to have data, from like you set up your calculation or your parameter and it was supposed to be like the last 2 weeks or something, you could literally just see in a little calendar those 2 weeks highlighted as boxes and days on your calendar instead of having to like look at a table that had all of the values in it as strings or exact dates. I was like, that's smart right there. So I really liked their session.
No,
Any others that folks got to attend? Chris, were there any ones that you were like, wow, I love that session?
I unfortunately did not get to catch a single session this year. I was busy running around, but that's unfortunate. But I caught them all online. I got them all online, so I'm going to rewatch them. So yeah, for those of y'all that don't know, they're all recorded, so you can definitely catch them online. I did, from the keynote, like a lot of the new features coming out. So I don't know if anybody had some favorites that came out. I mean, Tableau Copilot's really cool. I like that. That's amazing.
Can you give a
And
shout out for spell check?
yeah, yeah, I know it's the little things, isn't it? It's the little things. Um, yeah, some of the stuff that they're doing with like Teams integration. I know people have been begging for that. Like that's huge finally. And there was some stuff that they're doing with like Data Cloud, which I thought was also pretty cool as well. So, and the direction of their future vision, I don't know if y'all check that out, just sort of where they're planning on taking the product, and just the change in the interface and how it looks and how you interact with the product was really cool. I mean, the idea of having a canvas with different sort of components built into the canvas, everything from the data source to the semantic layer to your prep semantic, and then your dashboard visualizations was pretty cool. I think the product is exciting. There's going to be a lot of changes over the next couple years, which is definitely going to make all of our lives a lot easier. So it was really cool.
One of my favorite things that they announced was the ability to relate published data sources or join published data sources, which like an ongoing
Yes.
issue
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us at Visa,
Yeah.
at least, where you're like, I don't own either of these, but I need to use them
Right.
together.
Exactly.
So,
So no more. They're reusable, right? Which is basically the
yes.
whole point. Yes.
Hmm.
That was nothing more frustrating when I had to create a data source that's almost identical to another one. Is it?
For
Very.
like one extra tiny little table or something like that. Yeah, we just have like a proliferation of like the exact same data source in all of these different dashboards. So I'm super excited about that.
I'm excited too. Yes, definitely. That was a cool feature. Anybody else know of any other features that came out that you liked?
So they had sentiment analysis and Tableau prep. I know that they had Tab Type 4, and I used to good blogs on that. How to use that Python to be able to do it directly in Tableau prep. That was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, sentiment analysis in prep is, yeah, that was amazing. A lot of AI stuff that came out. It was really, really cool. AI was everywhere in case you didn't weren't paying attention. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. Anything else?
They had the Google fonts,
Yep.
Oh,
The web
more
safe
fonts.
fonts,
Yeah.
yeah, that they added. I think they added a lot of them, like 12 or 15 different ones. So for all the people who are sick of looking at Tableau Book and Arial, rejoice. There's a lot of good ones in there.
yeah.
I did. Oh, go
Go
for
ahead.
it, Chris. No, you're good.
I was going to say, the admin in me sort of liked a lot of the new Tableau Cloud stuff that's coming out,
Mm.
sort of parity to server. So like, Cloud Manager now, so you can see across sites. That's pretty awesome. They have a migration, they're expanding the migration API to like allow you to do a lot more with that. So I thought it was, I guess the admin in me liked that. It was pretty cool.
I know Will Sutton was interviewing the ambassadors and visionaries about their favorites. So if you look on his LinkedIn feed, you'll see what people thought was the best.
Yeah. Yeah, we should in our Slack, why don't we'll start a little channel if we don't already have one around TC, and we can go ahead and post some of our favorite features and maybe even some of our favorite sessions. I think that'd be a good place to share so we can all take this discussion there too.
What was the best swag that someone got at conference?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know, I got a headlamp. That was pretty cool. A camping
Headlamp.
headlamp. Yes.
That's amazing. I got like the speaker, I think I don't know if you got one too for being an ambassador, Amy, like the little like swag bags. I liked the it was like basically like a beach tote. Nothing wild as like a canvas beach tote, but it had a zipper on top. And I don't know why, but that just tickled me so much because I feel like a lot of totes you have, all your stuff spills out of them, which then defeats the purpose. And I just end up carrying a backpack everywhere. But the zipper, really, they got me. So convenient.
I had a friend win the Tableau fanny pack off the they had a little game there in Data Village with it was like the
Wow.
fortune game. You know what I'm talking about? They had a little Wheel of Fortune game. So they played that and won a fanny pack. It's
The
pretty cool.
Cotopaxi ones, those are so nice.
Yeah, I saw one of the groups down there, and they're going to have their drawing at 4 o'clock during Iron Viz. And I was like, oh, maybe that's not the best time to have your drawing.
That's a tough time to do Iron
Yeah,
Man.
yeah. There was, they said, what's Iron Viz? And I was just like, whoa,
Yeah,
that's a Super Bowl Tableau conference.
yeah, yeah. They kicked everybody out of Data Village actually. That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd
Well,
never been
that,
to conference, so that was pretty cool.
yeah, I know. So fun. Your first one. Hopefully, first of many.
Yeah, I was like, I saw Lauren Brown. I was like, I read your book, and I saw Anne Jackson. I was like, I've read your book.
That's so cool.
A lot of fan experiences there for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, those are all the official questions that I had for our little town hall. But if any of the attendees have questions about what Tableau conference is like, or yeah, any other sessions or other resources that we picked up that we recommend, definitely feel free to put those in the chat. And other than that, I will turn it back over to Chris and Homer for the what do you call it? What do y'all call it? Ask me anything about Tableau. Am I making that up? Is that the official
Ask
title?
anyone anything.
Ask
Yeah.
anyone anything. Thank you,
About
Homer.
Tableau.
Mhm.
About Tableau. Yeah.
About Tableau, not
Yeah. Well,
anything about anything. Okay.
well, Cait, thank you again for the fantastic presentation and also moderating our town hall. So everyone give Cait a big round of applause. Thank you very much.